Green Bay is a small town, only 100,000 people. Those 100,000 people may be different in many ways, but there's one thing that brings them all together: the Green Bay Packers. In Tiletown, the blue-collar city only knows hard work, tailgating, championships, but more importantly, they know family. We have a saying in this town: faith, family, and the Green Bay Packers are all that you need. Matt and I grew up in Green Bay. You could say that we are Green Bay, or even better, the voices of Green Bay. We bring a local feel of Packer fandom to a worldwide audience. Friendship, family, and football. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the Freezer Podcast. We are back! This is the Freezer Podcast, where we bring you the local feel of Packer fandom to a worldwide audience. I'm Sanjay.
And I'm Matt.
And we have a special guest today. I'm very honored to have this guy on because you know what? He is in Packer royalty, at least gene-wise. And, obviously he's had, a great experience with the Packers growing up, obviously. And that's Fred Thurston, grandson of Fuzzy Thurston, of the Hall of Fame team of Vince Lombardi's Packers. Fred, how's it going today?
It's good, man. Thank you guys for having me on. I'm excited to be a part of the show.
Yeah, absolutely.
We're stoked to have you.
Yeah, this is a cool moment when, you can get some collaborations with a lot of the I'll tell you right now, I don't know if there's another football team in the league that has as many podcasts, of their following team, unlike the Packers. And it's really cool to get a collaboration with you, with our podcast and yours, obviously. And why don't you tell us about your podcast and what you're kind of about with social media and what you do?
Yeah, man, you really can't nail it better than that. I mean, Packer Podcast we're a family. Like it's a great thing. I was telling my wife this the other day. I'm like, I have like no enemies. I have no competition. Like we're all good. We're all helping each other out. We're all coming on each other's show. It's important. I love it. I love the camaraderie, however you want to say it. With all of us, it's great. I think it just solidifies what Packer fandom's all about. But for me personally, I run Sweep Studios, which was Sweep Podcast for a long time. Been going on, third year with Sweep Podcast. Before that, I did a couple things. But yeah, I'm on everything: Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, SoundCloud, iTunes. You can find me anywhere under the sun. I'm always out there trying to continue to promote, continue to bring the latest and the greatest from 1265 to everyone I possibly can. And then, I throw in a few podcasts here and there and let people look at my ugly face and talk a little bit about Packers.
Absolutely. And, and to be clear here, follow him at F Thurston XXII. That's the Roman numerals II. And you can find him on Twitter, and you can find the Sweep Studios on Twitter as well. Do you guys have the Sweep Podcast on Twitter as well?
Sweep Studios kind of overruns everything. You can find Sweep Podcast through that. We also have the sweepstudios.com website that kind of covers all the bases. It keeps our Instagram account up there, Twitter account, all of the videos, all of the live feed, all that kind of stuff going on as much as we can. I'm one guy running it, so it's a little chaotic. I have a 2-year-old who absolutely refuses for me to not pay attention to him. So basically I hide down here, lock the door, throw some candy bars around the house, and just kind of wait until eventually he's done eating them.
I'll tell you this right now. I mean, I commend you doing it alone. I don't think I could have done it alone. That's why I got my friend here, Matt. And it's like, this is a hard thing to tackle on your own, and you do it, and you do it so well. So again, it's so awesome that you're able to join us and share a little bit about your podcast and your studios. But let's just dive right into that. Fred, what really, obviously, with your grandfather, it's kind of easy to say how you really got bled into the Packer fandom, but tell us a little bit about your childhood and how it kind of, got you to your point now as a podcast holder and, a big Packer fan.
I didn't have a damn choice.
Yeah, right. Absolutely.
Really, no. I did. My grandpa told me I did, I guess, at one point. But no, man, I growing up in it, seeing it all the time, always around me. you kind of you don't realize really what you're witnessing, what you're going through as a kid. I'm rubbing elbows with Paul Horning and Bart Starr, and they're coming to birthdays and they're just around, and it didn't really click for me until I got older and I started to like read more and kind of look at film and figure out, holy crap, these are not just dudes showing up to my birthday. These are like these are
Right.
legends, not only of the Packers but of football in general. And I think that's what makes this team is so special. And that team of the 60s is they weren't just good for the 60s, they were good for football. And they changed the entire game. They changed the atmosphere. And even they didn't realize it when it was going on. My grandpa's told me a million times they went to play the first Super Bowl and they were like, whatever. Like, they didn't think it was going to matter. They didn't think anyone was going to tune in. They didn't think it was going to be a big deal. They all just assumed it was another game and it was, that's it. I think we can all say it changed a little bit. Things got a little bit bigger.
Absolutely.
But no, I mean, growing up, it was just hard to kind of fathom. And then, like I said, when I got older, I started to kind of understand. And that's when it was like, holy cow. And I kind of started to embrace it. For a long time, it was kind of always like, oh yeah, well, there's more to me than just that. And then all of a sudden I got older and I'm like, no, that's what I am. Like, that's who I need to be. This is part of the legacy. And it was like I fell in love with it. Started to follow it, started to write about it. And then I eventually got to a point where my wife basically told me, I don't know what the hell you're talking about anymore. I don't know what a cover two is. I don't know I don't know what a Sam linebacker is. I don't know what any of that stuff is. And she's like, you got to figure it out. You got to like find a buddy to talk to or something. And I'm like, well, geez, I'm not going to AA or anything, but I knew a couple guys, and actually a guy out there was like, hey, you want to come on my podcast? And I'm like, what the heck is a podcast? And jumped on it and just talked a little bit. I'm like, this is great, man. I'm like, this is fantastic. So I decided to start out. You can probably find some of my first episodes and have a great laugh if you want to, because it is hilarious. I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know how to like segue. I don't know how to talk. I don't know how to do anything. And I still don't. To be totally honest with you, I still don't have a freaking clue what I'm doing. And when I try to do something, it doesn't come out nearly as good as it should. And my wife, who probably has listened to maybe one of the 100 shows I've done in my life, she's like, don't. She's like, don't try. She's like, just be you. Just go in there and do what you do. Talk football like you do to me. Talk football like you do to our sons. Talk football like you do to your buddies. And that's what people want. So that's what I do. I just get on the mic and, I mean, God knows what I say, but sometimes it makes sense and sometimes it doesn't. And people sometimes like it. It's weird, but I love it. I love every minute of it. I'm not going to stop doing it. And I'm beyond grateful for my opportunities. Being the grandson of Fuzzy Thurston. My family growing up were very football orientated. My great grandfather was a huge sports person in Wisconsin, in Eau Claire, in Green Lake. He brought a lot of sports to that city way back in the day. My dad was a phenomenal football player. I played as a younger kid and then kind of faded away from it, which was a big mistake. But it's just that it just goes. It's just in our blood. I mean, we love it. We understand the game. I see it differently. I feel like I love it, and I'm gonna keep talking about it because that's just what I do.
Yeah, and keep doing it, man. And we love the stuff that you put out. I'm sure all your followers can say the same thing. Hopefully, our followers can be some of your new followers now. Like what you mentioned earlier about just you didn't appreciate it at a younger age, and I feel the same way. When Favre won that Super Bowl, I didn't like cry. I didn't like. My parents were happy about it, and like obviously the grown-ups in the room were happy. But like to me, I was just kind of like, oh, they won. No,
well, I think it's kind of like one of those things where you're not really aware of it until you have to be older and more mature to kind of really appreciate one, the importance of football, not just in our country, but to this city and state. And then two, the real importance of the Green Bay Packers, what they stand for, what they've meant, to football, the country, etc. And I think we all kind of had similar situations where we all sort of had an awakening at some point. Obviously, with your grandfather playing for him, it was even more. So, I think we're all in the same boat there where, it's like as an older male now, you're like, man, this team really is that important, not just to Green Bay, but just kind of like the sports, genre in general. I mean, they're one of the most iconic franchises of all time.
Right.
And here we are talking about them. I mean, you can't ask for a better spot.
Absolutely. And I think, when you look at it, I didn't know about the dark ages, of the Green Bay Packers. I really didn't until I started I basically middle school and high school, where I started following, the team and understanding, more than just Brett Favre and Donald Driver or, whoever the main players were. I was trying to get to know the depth of the roster. And, and once obviously Favre was on his kind of tail end of his years, and then we started to move on to Rodgers, is kind of when I started to just really fully invest myself as someone that would say blood, sweat, and tears almost for a football team. And obviously 2010 was just /11 was a memorable moment, because I finally got to appreciate what my parents got to see, and obviously in your case what your grandfather got to witness firsthand, what it means for a little town like this that shouldn't even be on the radar of pro football sports or even pro sports. It's a real big impact on everybody.
And to play into that, and Fred, you can speak to this. I'm born and raised here in Green Bay. I've been here all my life. Fuzzy had a great bar up in town.
Absolutely.
Fuzzy's, which, I mean, anybody you talk to here who's from that era or even younger, everybody has a story about Fuzzy's, and it was kind of a central point in town.
Oh, yeah.
Even just driving here today, I was listening to the radio, and they had a caller contest. People were sharing war stories about the 60s Packers and their best stories, and they said something about somebody who had gotten they misplaced their foot on their pedal and drove their car into a wall or something near Fuzzy's, and they went into the bar, and he was like, "Oh, I'll help you out, and we'll hook you up with a tow truck and this and that and whatever they had to do to get him situated." But it was the whole family thing, and it being ingrained in a small town, you had access to the greats. They were there hanging out.
Well, I'll tell you this right now, and Fuzzy, I mean, I'm sure you've been there plenty of times. I'm sorry, Fred. Sorry, I'm calling you Fuzzy now. So,
yeah, that's okay. Won't be the first time.
If you know where Fuzzy's is, it's not even close to anywhere what you would go to in Green Bay. At the time, it was probably a good spot to go to. But when you're here now, over in West Mason, that's not a really crazy part of town, especially on the side street that it was on. It was not really a big major area. So the fact that was kind of a cool place for people to be in, that family atmosphere of just kind of hey, Packer weekends, we're here. It's a great place. It's owned, it's started by one of the greats. It's kind of a cool thing. What did you ever? How often did you ever go there?
When it was Fuzzy's on Mason, I was in high school and college, so I got there a decent amount of times. But it was Fuzzy's Shenanigans over in Alloway. That was the bar before Fuzzy's on Mason.
Oh, sure.
That was the place. I mean, that was the place that I got to really witness some things that I don't think most kids should probably witness. But it kind of helped me become who I was, and I don't know if that's a good thing or not. But he had a place over on I don't even remember. I can't tell you what street it was, but it's over in Alloway. It's right on the water. It was Fuzzy Shenanigans. It was connected to a liquor store. I drove by there not long ago. It's completely different. But back then, it was incredible. Doors were always open. Jukebox was always blaring. Packers were coming in and out. Lynn Dickey, Makowski, Horning. I mean, it was like a revolving door. They had a little bit of a back room with a pool table and another little kind of sidebar, if you will, that a lot of times the larger guys or the bigger players would kind of hang out in. But I spent a ton of my childhood there. We were there all the time, every weekend, football on every TV. I was running around, stealing candy bars, stealing soda, playing pool, playing football out in the gravel. Busted up my body half the time out there, but it was just incredible. I mean, I'd sit there and I'd watch all these people, and it's like, man, they just get happier and happier when they're here. What's going on? And I never quite got it until I got older, and I was like, oh, I know what they were doing. I get it. I figured it out now. But man, I'm telling you, the things that like went on, the dancing on the bar, and the like. As a kid, it not only was it great because my whole family was there, but it was like everybody else turned to a kid. I mean, we all know what happens when we have a few drinks. We kind of lose inhibitions. We're
Oh, yeah.
dancing, we're hugging, we're kissing, we're just having the time of your life. And that's like how it was all the time. And so that's how I thought life was, you know? But I'll tell you one thing about shenanigans that I actually told someone not too long ago, and this is I'm going to say it on every podcast I ever go to until I figure it out. But there was a refrigerator in the back, one of those back rooms, and every single Packer player from, shoot, I don't even know when he had it, probably late 70s until mid 2000s, every Packer player that ever came through that bar signed that refrigerator, and nobody knows where it is.
Oh
Some
no!
somebody has that refrigerator.
That refrigerator is probably the most expensive refrigerator in the world right now.
I mean, it was insane. I mean, every time I go there, I'd look around and try to find a new one. And I'm not kidding you, any single Packer player that's ever played, and most of them came, when they came in the 80s and the early 90s, these rookies, they people would get, hey, go to Fuzzies. And they'd come to Fuzzies, and my grandpa would talk to them, give them a couple beers, and have them sign. And they'd kind of get acclimated a little bit into like what Green Bay was about, because that's kind of what it is. I mean, it's blue collar. It's the guy sitting down at the end of the bar having a beer with you. That's what kind of Green Bay is. And man, to find that refrigerator, I swear to God, I dream about it. I dream about it. I'm not kidding you guys. I literally dream about it.
Well, if anybody out there is watching, you got that. You know where that fridge is. Let us know. We'll get in touch with Fred.
So let's just move on to. We'll go right into Bart Starr here, and you said you rubbed elbows with a lot of these guys, especially even Bart Starr, and the impact that he has kind of made on not only our two star-studded Hall of Fame quarterbacks that we've had, Favre and Rodgers, but even probably every quarterback that's kind of run through here and at least had a an impact, maybe like Don Majkowski or obviously Mike McMahon, maybe everybody, if you've ever walked through the tunnels and you're about to take center, has at least watched some sort of thing on Bart Starr, or has maybe even met him. But what kind of impact have you seen, not only on your life, but also on the Green Bay Nation itself, of what Bart Starr really meant to this team?
What Bart meant to football, what Bart meant to the world. I mean, he was so much bigger than I think just Green Bay. And his impact to just everybody. And you see it with his passing, how many, former and even current NFL quarterbacks came out and said, hey, Bart took the time to come talk to me when I was a rookie, or come to visit me when I was in the hospital, or just, all the things that he did. He was just incredible. He set the bar so high, man. I mean, it's almost, hard to find another player who's going to have such an impact. I look around the league, and JJ Watt obviously is someone who does stuff like that, but for him to be so impactful on and off the field, and then to be so instrumental in bringing the two first Super Bowls to Green Bay. I mean, it's almost like he's mythological. It's like, is he even a real person, because of how perfect kind of his life was? And I was lucky enough to meet him a few times. The first time I got to meet him was back during, the alumni, when the alumni comes, the alumni game weekend. Sure. My grandpa used to take me to the hotel and the game and all that stuff like that. And I remember when Bart finally walked into the hotel room, it was insane. Like, everybody stops. Everybody looks at him. It was like the world took a breath when Bart walked in. He was that big. He was that huge. But the funny part about it was, I don't think that Bart saw that. I don't think he had any idea of how incredible he was. And I think that's what makes him so great. But for me, man, I mean, that first time that I ever saw him, I think I was around 10 years old, and he came walking in, like I said, and, what do you say? Like, do I shake his hand? Do I even know how to do that at 10 years old? I didn't know what to do. I was like terrified. Like here's this guy, this mythological figure, this legend among legends. And I had been around Horning, and I'd been around Jim Taylor. I'd gotten to meet Bart,
Oh,
and it was incredible. Um, so here I am, like I said, at 10 years old, just analyzing every move I'm about to make. Is this going to be great? Is it going to be awesome? Am I going to have an opportunity to shake his hand, talk to him? Comes up, I stick my hand out, total just dead hand shake because I was so nervous. It was terrible. Um, it was nerve wracking. But I introduced myself. My grandpa said, "Hey, this is my grandson Fred." Blah blah blah. Got to meet him. Great. Everything was good. It wasn't until the next year that I went on the sideline for the game. And oh no, it was 2 years later. I went on the sidelines, and it's back when players used to get to bring a family member on the sideline with them. And I saw him again, and he's walking towards me. I'm sweating. I'm terrified. I don't know what to think. And I go up and I stick my hand out, and I'm like, this time I'm gonna break his hand. Like, I'm gonna be so strong about it, which I wasn't. But I stick my hand out. He grabs my hand, puts his arm around me, and he's like, "Hey, little fuzzy." And I was like, oh, like I just jaw to the ground. Pretty sure I peed my pants. Like I didn't even know what to like think or do. Completely stunned. And that was just who he was. Like he didn't need to remember me. He didn't have to remember me. He probably meets 100,000 people a year. But for him to actually remember my name, for me, it was like, that's it. Like he's it. He's like he is the guy. He's everything that people say he is. He's everything that we write about him. He's everything that has ever been said. Um, his generosity is unmatched. Um, his love for the fans of Green Bay is unparalleled, and his passion for the game. I mean, I think we've all seen it from him being a player, a coach, the way that he led that offense in the 60s. My grandpa, I was looking through his book earlier and just kind of trying to find something that he might have wrote about him. And he basically says Lombardi ran the offense, but Starr was the guy. And that he doesn't think, my grandpa didn't think that there would ever be another quarterback to ever play the position that could run an offense the way that their coach wanted as much as Bart did. And Bart just knew it. And there was a perfect connection between Lombardi and Starr. And they were just able to just completely dominate for a decade. And it's incredible. I mean, what they were able to do. And that's just what he did on the field. If you get into kind of what he did off the field and Rawhide, Vince Lombardi Cancer Foundation, Stars Children's Fund. I mean,
yeah, he was.
Guy's incredible.
He was a great like philanthropist in the area, and in one of the common themes all week long, with all this stuff being talked about, obviously Bart, people talking about their experiences with him, or when they met him, etc. And obviously, we all know how fantastic of a quarterback he was. He led the Packers to all these championships. But probably the biggest common theme was what a decent human being and what a down-to-earth person he was to everybody he met, whether you were first time meeting him as a fan or you were meeting him for the 10th, 12th time. He just had this generosity and this love for just the people who recognized him. And he almost, was almost too humble in a way, And hearing, your story about him, about how he remembered you and put his arm around you. I mean, I've heard that a couple times now. Like, he remembered these people and, just a fan. Oh, I remember you from last year. And then he always took the time to shake hands or sign autographs, and didn't take kind of, his position and what he meant to these people for granted. Like, he knew, that he was an important figure in their lives and it meant a lot, not just him, but the Packers. And he took time and gave everybody time. He made them feel special, So, I mean, it's really a testament to him and kind of everybody, who's been around him. I think that, his legacy here has been cemented for a long time. And just hearing all these stories has been really kind of warming.
It's kind of crazy to think. I remember listening to, I believe it was some show on NFL Network, but they had mentioned Vince Lombardi didn't even want Bart Starr originally. He actually signed two quarterbacks the year that he had him. he gave him a little bit of a shot, and then he kind of, I think, went 1-4 with his first start. He put back the other guy in. He got hurt again, and then the rest was history because then he takes him on to the first Super Bowl. It's kind of interesting if that doesn't happen. If he doesn't get injured, we're not talking about Bart Starr.
Kind of like Mikowski. If Mikowski doesn't bust his ankle, Brett Favre never happens.
Exactly. So, Fred, awesome story. I mean, it's so cool to hear from the source itself. Because it's only one thing to imagine it from, other people talking about stories that they may have heard or seen, but to hear it from you and a kid that just is growing up and doesn't really understand that these guys are like, like Greek gods, of football, basically. And now as a father of your own, it's cool to be able to tell your kids someday that, maybe they will never ever get to meet Bart Starr, and maybe they never get to see. I mean, they'll maybe get to see his clips and stuff of him playing, but your stories will basically, be, going down through your generations.
Yeah.
From time to time, and you're gonna be that great grandfather or grandfather that had those days, and it's got to be a cool feeling for you.
Yeah, it's huge. Not even just with Bart, but just in general with everything. My oldest is 12. He's kind of getting a little bit into that. But I don't think he even still kind of understands. He'll walk down into the studio and kind of see the jerseys, the footballs, the helmets, and he'll be, it's cool, but he doesn't like really understand it. Right. But, to go off of one of your points is, his generosity and stuff. One of the things that probably my absolute favorite thing about my grandfather was that in the entire time that I'd ever been alive with him, spent time with him, been around him, whether it was in Green Bay, Appleton, Neenah, Florida, Wapaka, wherever we were, no matter what, no matter where, no matter the circumstance, I never once in my entire life saw him turn down an autograph. Never.
That's awesome.
We were
it's hard to find that these days. It really is.
And that's kind of my point is that, we would be at family dinner, absolutely, sign an autograph. We would be walking to the park, absolutely, sign. He'd stop, shake a hand, take an autograph, sign an autograph, take a picture, whatever it was. And there was times where I was kind of like, come on, man, that's, like we're trying to eat or something, But my grandpa loved it. He absolutely embraced every moment. And I truly, truly believe that there is nobody, there probably never will be anybody who loved the Green Bay Packers more than my grandpa. I think he went to every single home game that he was ever alive for. Never missed them during the 70s, 80s. He used to have a little perch up before they, did the addition. There was a little 2 steps up kind of over by the press box with a little fence, yellow fence, and he would stand up there every single game at the third quarter, and we would all look up to him as a family. We were on the same row, and we'd wave, and that was just normal. That was, every game he went to, he was always there. I still look up into that corner every game I go to, by the way, but he was just in love with the football team. Absolutely loved them. And it wasn't until I kind of started to hear these stories about Bart, on the radio, on TV, read them, that you might have somebody in competition with them for somebody who might have loved the Packers as much as my grandpa, and that was Bart. I don't think there was those two together. I mean, just an absolute undying passion for the Green Bay Packers.
Well, and it was contagious because I can tell you this: your grandfather was definitely beloved up here, and everybody that I ever ran to. My grandfather moved here from New York City just to be by the Packers and set up a medical practice here because he loved the team, and he always talked about Bart and Fuzzy, and that goes on through all of his doctor friends and et cetera. They all had nothing but the best things to say about those guys, and you nailed it.
And with that being said, we're going to take our first break. This has been an awesome little catch up here with Fred Thurston. You can follow him at fthurstonxxii on Twitter, and you can follow him with the Sweep Studios. We'll be right back.